Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Light E8 Truth paper, a free online paper. We are reading articles in the February 2021 edition, and the article we're reading today is on page 5 of that edition. What exactly do the WHO do? Okay, so without further ado, this article was written by Dustin Broadberry. The World Health Organization, the WHO, is the embodiment of an organization whose policy and strategy is directed by the pharmaceutical corporations it apparently regulates and not the citizens it supposedly serves. This is unsurprising when 76% of WHO funding is from voluntary contributions, notably foundations and pharmaceutical companies, who wield unimaginable influence over world health policy. This cosy financing relationship between the regulator and the regulated has resulted in one man alone, the anodyne Bill Gates, being crowned the Tsar of international public health. Why not? Gates contributes 20% of WHO funding through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. It is no secret that money buys influence. This corporatized takeover of world health policy bears many hallmarks of the Fabian envisaged world run by a body of experts. Only this time, the qualified rulers are multinational pharmaceutical corporations and billionaires, and the role of intergovernmental organizations like the WHO is to help them sell patented drugs. Not much has changed then since the days of rule by royal dynasties, where the richest and most powerful bloodlines ruled the land. The difference nowadays is that the wealth of billionaires like Gates and the influence of pharmaceutical corporations buys the necessary political influence to set public policy and agenda. In her brilliant documentary, Trust Who, filmmaker Lillian Frank reveals the unhealthy ties between the WHO and big lobbying firms. For example, it was not until the late 90s that new regulations began to emerge around the dangers of smoking. This was largely down to big tobaccos lobbying the WHO since the 1950s to downplay the public health risks associated with smoking. This gave rise to the iconic cigarette advertising campaigns of the 80s and the smoking epidemic that followed, despite the dangers of smoking being long understood by health professionals, especially the WHO. Likewise, the nuclear industry has been a strong lobbying force behind the WHO around events like Fukushima and Chernobyl, to effectively gloss over the effects of radiation poisoning in support for the feasibility of nuclear energy. To fully understand the strategy of the WHO throughout SARS-CoV-2, it is important to note the agency's erroneous declaration of the swine flu pandemic in 2009. Following unorthodox relaxing of rules around the definition of a pandemic, specifically the severity of illness and mortality rate. Swine flu brought about a new culture of disease classification, where you could now have a pandemic with 0 deaths. These amendments took place following secret deals between European governments and pharmaceutical giants GSK, Sanofi and Novartis, resulting in a paycheck for Big Pharma in the region of $18 billion for a vaccine that was not required for a pandemic that did not happen. Later, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, that's PACE, held an emergency inquiry into the influence exerted by drug makers over the WHO for a disease that it transpired killed between 1/3 to 1/10 the rate of seasonal flu. In 2020, the WHO crowned China the global pacemaker for a new phenomenon known as lockdowns. Unsurprising when Tedros Adhanom became the WHO's first non-doctor Director General, amid allegations of heavy lobbying by CCP diplomats. Adhanom was effectively China's dog in the fight, despite an appalling track record on public health and human rights. In 2017, Adhanom was accused of covering up 3 cholera epidemics in as Ethiopian health minister, when he had served as a Central Committee member for the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a Marxist political party accused of crimes against humanity. Preceding his appointment at the WHO, Adhanom was chair of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria, an international financing organisation established in 2002 with seed funding from Gates BMFG. Later, he served as a board member of Gavi, another BMGF public health hydra. Prior to 2020, the WHO's reputation was blemished by multiple controversies, with calls from the international community to rethink global health policy and especially the role of the specialised agency of the UN. The Lancet published an independent report calling for the WHO to be stripped of its role in declaring disease outbreaks, and the journal Nature called out their poor response to the Ebola outbreak of April 2014, when it took the agency until August of that year to declare a global emergency. Later, in 2017, the WHO were criticised for allocating $200 million a year for executive travel expenses, exceeding the agency's combined budget to combat AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. Reminiscent of how the Red Cross raised $500 million for Haiti and built just 6 houses. Okay, that's the end of that article. I hope you found that informative. Thank you very much for coming and listening. Stay safe, keep well, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.